True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffendaffer, and I'm so happy to have you all here with me tonight. I know it's kind of a last minute show, but I wanted to put something together because there is so much going on in true crime right now. Many of us that are in the path of Milton, of course, are getting ready and prepared. So I thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and have a show tonight, because tomorrow, who knows if there's going to be electricity. In any event, thanks for being here. If you haven't been on this channel before, really try to promote you all having a take. I have a take. Not everybody is going to agree with my take. Please get involved in the comments. Please get involved in the chat while you're watching. It makes the show so much more interesting. And I go back through and I read every single comment. It might take me a month to get through a show if there's hundreds of comments on that particular show, but it's really important. I learned so much. You'll never see a retired FBI agent, a judge, a prosecutor, a defense attorney on a jury. Who you see on a jury are everyday people just like you all that haven't really been part of that system. So I really think a lot of what everybody has to say. And for the judges and attorneys and prior law enforcement that might be on here, welcome to. You know, I always love your takes. We're going to kick off really quick because we do have a lot to discuss. I want to start out with Sandra Birchmore. For those of you who don't know the Sandra Birchmore case, I'm going to try to put it in a thumbnail. It's hard to because it's complicated, but essentially Sandra Birchmore started in a police explorer group with the Stoughton Police Department. Stoughton is outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So wide-eyed, excited to be part of a program like that was Sandra Birchmore. And those types of programs should be run by individuals who are the most trusted around juveniles, because they're typically for people who are middle school and high school, who are thinking about joining law enforcement. Quite frankly, it's such a great recruiting mechanism, because if you're in the Stoughton Police Department and then you had somebody that was an explorer, you got to see how they acted all throughout that program. I know for me, for the first year when I was an FBI agent, I was a leader in the explorer program in Houston for the FBI's Explorer program. And it was such a great opportunity to really teach all the different facets of law enforcement. You actually compete with other departments, and there's this huge competition, and it's really kind of cool. So I really enjoyed that. But when I heard about the Explorer program basically exposing Sandra Birchmore in a way that was really just disgusting, Matthew Farwell was part of that program and began grooming her at a very young age. Things like helping her with her homework, taking her to the library, just things like that. Things that no normal grown man would ever be doing with a young student. At 15, he raped her. And the reason it's rape, it's because she was not at an age to legally consent. Now, Massachusetts age of consent is 16. It varies throughout the whole United States. Some states it's 18, some 17, some 16. You might be surprised to know that the age of consent in many states, including Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, one of our territories, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and many others, 13 years old is the age of consent as long as you're married. So pretty scary thing, but it varies from state to state. But she was only 15, and what ended up happening as the years went by, this relationship continued. She ended up getting pregnant. And then if you are to believe the indictment lodged by the federal authorities, she was murdered by Matthew Farwell. And she's been so charged under a federal statute that allows you to charge murder of a witness, of a federal witness. And she, in a sense, was just that. It's a stretch of that statute because she was a witness to a crime, and the crime was her statutory rape. So in any event, he's been charged. He's sitting in jail right now. He's awaiting adjudication of his charges. But what I wanted to talk about today was something I found very interesting that happened. His brother, William, they're twins, he recently just decertified as a police officer. Now, there's two different kinds of decertifications. This particular decertification that he did means you're in a national database. You can never be in law enforcement again. And some of you might be saying, well, that doesn't seem like a very big sort of punishment for somebody, depending on what they did. And in this case, it's William Farwell, we know, was having a sexual relationship with the woman that his brother was having a sexual relationship with, Sandra Birchmore. Now, this relationship, we know, took place even days before she was murdered. Again, according to the documents, Matthew Farwell murdered her and then staged it to look like it was a suicide. So this was determined to be a suicide by the medical examiner in Massachusetts. And it wasn't until it was looked at by the FBI was everything just turned over on its head and these charges came forward. But because we see just this week, William Farwell decertifying himself, basically voluntarily, this tells me that I believe he knows a lot. I think that this is a beginning stage of part of a cooperation deal, possibly. We don't know whether he was involved in statutorily raping Sandra Birchmore, because there's been no documentation as to when he first had sexual relations with Sandra Birchmore. But we know he was having relationships with Sandra Birchmore for years. And like I said, even up to the days before she was pregnant, believed to be with his brother's child. They had had sex just before the murder took place. So really just disgusting stuff. I mean, it's something that is made for a nightmare of a movie. It's nothing that you expect people that you entrust to uphold the law and to be pillars of the society to ever do to Sandra Birchmore. But I think we're going to really see this unfold, and we're going to be able to see whether brother turns on brother and actually comes forward and provides details, gritty details as to the plan regarding the murder beyond what we know from the indictment. And the details, how did things disintegrate to the point that he wanted to murder her? Was it because of the child? Of course, that's what everybody believes. But I think a lot of details the prosecution would love to have, because they want this to be rock solid. In addition, does William Farwell have any information about any other officers or people in the Stoughton Police Department that knew this was going on? Was anybody else complicit back in the Explore program, vulnerably raping or otherwise sexually assaulting people in that program? It has to be looked at, because guess who else is involved with sexual relationships? This is Robert Devine. Now, Robert Devine, I want to make sure I get this right, was actually the deputy chief of the Stoughton Police Department. The deputy chief. He wasn't just an officer. And he was involved with sexual relations with Sandra Birchmore. The question is, was she a consenting adult when they were involved with each other? Was it voluntary? There's a lot of questions that need to be asked. He has not decertified yet. Now, they've all are not certified right now. You know, they're all off their jobs. They're not certified, but there's a big difference between being not certified and being decertified. So I wanted to make that distinction for people who might be wondering about that. But back to Robert Devine, I think it's very interesting that he is below this board, and this board is called the Post. And the Post, and I want to give you what that acronym stands for, is the Police Office, let's see, standing. It's basically the individuals that determine if somebody is not keeping within the standards of the police force. So that is what they're before right now. Not they, but Robert Devine is before the Post, the police officers standard. And that they are going to make a determination whether they decertify him or not. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of this because I think it's just the beginning of what is going on behind the scenes with federal law enforcement authorities and also possibly state law enforcement authorities. Because remember, there are charges that could be charged at the state level by the Norfolk district attorney for murder of Sandra Birchmore if they so desired, based on the information uncovered by the FBI. So let's keep watching that one closely, but that's what I wanted to point out with what's going on there. Let's move on to Diddy. Diddy, as many of you may know, 120 individuals have retained an attorney. That attorney has charged or is going to charge in a civil suit. So it's not, I shouldn't use the word charge. They're going to lodge a civil suit saying, listen, Diddy sexually assaulted all of these individuals, 120. That's a lot. I don't think anybody's surprised. I know I wasn't surprised. I'm expecting many more. But what's the most interesting thing about this particular suit is 25 individuals are purportedly minors. That is, and I know many of you are saying, yes, Justin Bieber, yes, many others. He's the A-lister that everybody is talking about, that a tape may exist. And yes, I mean, it's the burning question. We've all seen the video of Justin Bieber and those horrible exchanges with Diddy in the wide open where, you know, the touching and just the awkwardness of to me, somebody who was possibly assaulting Bieber and then his reactions in public, you know. It's very awkward and strange to watch, but supposedly there's an actual video of their interactions when Bieber was not an adult. We'll see. Let's see how that all pans out. But we know at least there's going to be an attorney that's coming forward, 25 minors, male and female, that are going to lodge a civil suit. Now, a lot of people think, yeah, it's a civil suit. That doesn't really mean much. Well, it means a lot, because if you look at Ventura, who came forward, that was really the impetus for this whole entire case. Cassie's case really lit the fire, I think, for very specific charges that then were corroborated. And that was, I think, the catalyst that led to this gigantic Department of Homeland Security investigation, the DHS large-scale federal investigation that we're now seeing play out in the form of an indictment post the 2 search warrants that were served on Diddy's house. So let's watch that one closely. I want to see what minors are coming forward and are named in this particular civil suit. I think that's going to be very interesting. Let's move on, because we've got a lot to cover, to Karen Reed. Karen Reed is in a very interesting case for, I think, anybody that follows appellate law, anyone who finds that area of the law interesting. As many of you may know, her trial, the first trial, ended up a hung jury. That's what it was declared by the district judge, Judge Cannoni. And Judge Cannoni read specifically a letter from the foreman of the jury saying, we are at an impasse. It wasn't the first time they sent a letter to Judge Cannoni saying they were at an impasse. And despite sending them back, despite admonishing them, despite encouraging them in every way she could legally to please go back and render a verdict, they came back and said, we just can't render a verdict. She read the entirety of why they couldn't, about people having different principles and sides that they weren't going to back off of. I'm just paraphrasing here, and no verdict. So that's what was decided. Then after that, some jurors started coming forward. One juror came forward and said, he's terrified. Please seal our names forever. We just can't let our names out because we're terrified of the mob that supports Karen Reed coming after us. We've seen many people come after people on social media. Anybody who disagrees with Karen Reed, disagree and say anything other than, free Karen Reed or Karen Reed is innocent, the mob goes after her in full force. So the judge did seal all their names, but it hasn't stopped them from anonymously contacting the defense team, contacting prosecution team, contacting other people. And so what is going to be before the state Supreme Court, but they don't call it in Massachusetts the state Supreme Court. They actually call it the State Judicial Court, the SJC. And it's going to be on November 6th. So mark your calendars, November 6th. We've actually seen a similar type court held in Indiana in the Delphi case on a different issue. So I would expect a very similar type format where essentially the defense team is going to be able to make what they call oral arguments. They're going to be able to argue not just in a brief format, written format, but they're going to be able to tell the justices why they believe this verdict should be honored. In other words, they're going to say that of the 3 charges that were levied against Karen Reed, the first charge was murder 2, the second charge was manslaughter, and the third charge was leaving the scene of a death, essentially. And they are going to argue that counts 1 and 3 were actually decided upon, that the jury reached a verdict. Even though they didn't write the verdict, they didn't follow the proper protocols, they didn't file it, they didn't check any boxes. They're arguing that it didn't matter. That's what we agreed to. And the only thing we couldn't agree on was whether she should be found guilty of manslaughter. So they want to see the other 2 charges thrown out. The defense does. The prosecution says, hold on. There is case after case after case that has even gone up to the Supreme Court level that has said, unless you file a verdict correctly, unless you fill out the form, unless you return it in the proper format, it didn't happen. So you might have agreed on things behind the scenes, which happens a lot, right? Because you're bargaining. You're saying, hey, listen, I'll kick out this. I'll say, let's forget about murder 1, and I'll forget about leaving the scene of an accident if you guys agree to find her guilty of manslaughter. There's all this bargaining that goes on behind the scenes. So I'm not surprised that some things would have been agreed to in one degree or the other, but it was never done properly and never submitted. But that's the question before this court. None of us are going to decide it. No one is going to decide it except this judicial body. But I will say that I think the Supreme Court justices have really listened to these very arguments and made the decision in the past, multiple cases, that no, if you didn't fill out the forms, if you didn't give a verdict, it's done. And I think this one is even stronger than some of the others that went before the Supreme Court, because in this one, you actually had a foreman write a long note, if you will. It was long. It was well thought out. It was very well written on behalf of the jurors. So it would be completely going against that note and what the judge knew. So we'll see, though. I mean, it's going to be heard by all the justices, which is very important. Sometimes only, 3 justices or a different number than the full panel, I should say, will hear. In this case, it's going before the full panel. And I'm glad, because I think we need to have another judicial body look at this case, because there are so many people that just don't trust anyone in Massachusetts involved in this case currently. They don't trust Canoni. They don't trust law enforcement at any level. They don't trust the lab. It's kind of one of these things that has completely snowballed, and it's really sad to see, because yes, there are bad apples, certainly in the Stoughton police department, and some bad apples, in a sense, that were involved in this case to a different degree, at least so far with what we know. And to just paint a broad brush and say all Massachusetts State Police, all medical examiners, all justices are on the take or are producing false evidence, are facts. It's just, I think, way off the deep end. But nevertheless, it's going before the court. The other thing I wanted to just touch on is the O'Keefe family. Paul O'Keefe is the leader. They have filed a wrongful death suit. Many of you know about this. This was filed some weeks ago. But what's interesting that's happened recently is Karen Reed has said, well, wait a minute. I don't want this to go forward until after my criminal case has been adjudicated. And she doesn't want to go forward with it because you get deposed in a civil matter. You have to have attorneys question you about everything to do with the case. Well, she is more than willing to talk to ABC and any other affiliate and news media out in front of the court steps. Anybody else who will listen to her, she's always jabbering. She does not want to open her mouth in the form of a deposition before these attorneys, because now you've sworn to something. You can't take it back. A stenographer takes down every word. And so she's got herself in a bit of a pickle, because will they rule that you have to wait until the criminal case is adjudicated, or will they force her to be deposed prior to that under the Fifth Amendment? What the prosecution is saying, no, wait. She has already waived her right to self-incrimination because she's been incriminating herself all over the airwaves. So it'll be interesting. We've all seen all the statements. We're going to see even more. But it's been something to watch somebody make such a horrible mistake as telling story after story. None of them line up. So now we'll see what happens with this deposition. Okay, going to move on to the Menendez brothers. The Menendez brothers is a case that really, anybody who believes that the Menendez brothers were sexually assaulted by their father for years, I totally understand why anybody who believes that thinks that they should either be resentenced or that information should come into a trial setting and they should be retried. Totally understand it. I love Mark Garagos. We're friends. He's a great guy. He's involved in the representation, and I think he truly believes, I don't want to speak for him, but just in conversation that, that this happened because of that. I don't believe that. I don't believe that based on a couple factors. I want to say them really quick. First of all, I don't believe it because we, meaning law enforcement and anybody who watched that trial, anybody who goes back, they spent hours with a therapist. They spent hours with a therapist going forward because the guilty conscience that Eric had about murdering his parents, and he put it all on the line. They discussed why they committed the murders, how they committed the murders, how everything happened, and all these hours of tape recordings when they knew they had privilege anytime that you have a discussion with a psychiatrist, somebody in the medical profession, you have privilege where they're not allowed to talk. Same with a priest, same with a spouse. There are certain privileges. And they knew they had a privilege. But the doctor, the psychiatrist who was examining them, if you will, trying to help them, who had known them for years, by the way, he was so afraid they were going to try to murder him because he knew the details that he started recording everything. And that really ended up being, I think, a true godsend for the case. In fact, that was the whole reason the case could be filed. That was the big moment when all those tapes came out. So I don't believe that they wouldn't have spilled. They spilled the worst thing, right? We took a shotgun, we blew off my dad's head, and then we shot my mom, and then we went back, reloaded, and shot her again and blew her face off. I mean, these are just vicious, callous, horrible details of the crimes that they committed. And so this wasn't a crime of passion, by the way. They weren't in a situation where they feared for their life. I don't believe that. They meticulously planned this. They planned their alibi at a movie theater and another partial alibi with a friend that they were going to a party. They meticulously planned their alibi. They meticulously planned purchasing shotguns and ammunition, even though they existed in the house. You know, they realized, no, we need to make it look like somebody came in the house. So we're going to buy these shotguns. They knew exactly where they planned to bury them, and they buried them after the crime. They feigned, after they buried them and all this time goes by, they feigned a 911 call, sounding hysterical and out of their minds. Great acting job that I think carried over on the stand. That's my opinion. Again, I want everybody to have a take here. I'm willing to look at it. But it's hard for me to get over the hard evidence that exists in this case. The other thing was they were literally watching television, I believe eating ice cream on their sofa. They were ambushed, just sitting there surprised and just blown up with shotgun rounds. The shotguns do the job. I mean, nobody needs to have a pistol for home security. You need a shotgun because they're easy to shoot and you know, they do the job because they're so powerful. That's what they did to their parents. In addition, during this 911 call, they, you know, oh, they're hysterical, blah, blah, blah. This was their opportunity to tell law enforcement, we were scared for our lives. You know, my father's been molesting, you know, my brother Eric, still molesting him, stopped molesting me at 8, but still molesting him. That was their opportunity to give a reason and to plead this. But no, they didn't. Nor did they say this wild hair story, I think, to their initial defense attorney. This came way later, that all of a sudden they were abused. In fact, it came so late, it was an absolute shock when it was presented in court. And I want to take it a step further. Lyle Menendez admitted to sexually molesting his brother Eric multiple times and using instruments, objects to rape him. That they both agree on. Eric says that and Lyle says that. They said it under oath in a court of law. Kitty and Jose aren't here to even defend themselves. Anybody can say anything they want, but let me talk about the two pieces of evidence that everybody is talking about and, you know, that they're using to say, listen, this is new. 2023, a Menudo member, his name was, I believe, Roy Rossello. He comes out and again, he's doing his own, you know, film filming his story. And he drops this bombshell that Jose Menendez took him back to the Beverly Hills mansion and brutally raped him. 2023, this crime happened in 89, people. Come on. He just finally had this, epiphany that he should come forward with this critical information. Second, the letter. There was a letter that was purportedly found, I believe, in a dresser drawer of a cousin. 2018. All these almost 2 decades after the crime. And guess what? The cousin isn't even alive. Was it found? Was it not found? I don't want to call anyone a liar. I don't know. They need to be on the stand under oath, and that would really have to be authenticated, this letter. But those are the 2 pieces of evidence, and I struggle with them. I don't even know if they would be allowed in a new trial because I don't know how authentic the information is, how real. It's not corroborated. Did anyone else, Kitty Menendez, a neighbor, did anybody else know about Rosello going in and being raped? Did he tell anybody about it? Not that I'm aware of. So I think there's a lot of issue with the new evidence. Do I think they'll be resentenced? I think they might. Not because it's a sound decision, but because we are in a Me Too generation type situation. We're in a whole different viewpoint about cases like this particular case, and it's taken on a life of its own, really. The original prosecutor came forward, actually, and she is appalled. She said, oh my gosh, if social media decided our cases, is that what we're going to do now? We're going to have social media hype and influence come forward and change law and change, adjudication, change sentencings. Anyway, that was her point. So we'll see how it plays out. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a resentencing. I know many people say, well, they were model citizens behind bars. They've been there 30-something years. It's time for them to get out. You know what? Kitty and Jose Menendez were murdered at the prime of their lives. They had built a lot, obviously, financially. Jose Menendez had built an empire, really, from nothing, from washing dishes as a legal immigrant here. They fell in love. I mean, by all accounts, they had a lot of issues in that family. There were 50 witnesses in the first trial, I believe, that testified regarding just the abusive nature of Jose, of how he would degrade the boys and put them down and make them feel terrible and call them names. And I mean, it sounded horrible. I mean, you would never want a father like that. That isn't even really a father. But it's not a license to murder. They weren't 8 or 9 years old. They were full-on adults. And one of them was going to Princeton, although he had gotten suspended for cheating, Lyle. But they had means, they had intelligence, they had an education, and they could have made it on their own. And for them to argue that their lives were in jeopardy, and that's why they murdered their family so viciously, I just can't go there. I don't believe it. But I do understand why people who believe that they were assaulted sexually by the dad, I do understand why people think, hey, that's mitigating, they deserve a break. So we'll see how that plays out. I want to talk about Sarah Boone a little bit. So Sarah Boone, she's one of the most interesting. I've actually drew a parallel today with Karen Reed. They're so much alike. If you listen to what they say, how, basically nothing is their fault. Anything they've ever done in their life that didn't go right, it's always somebody else. It's this, that. The facial expressions, and I actually caught two facial expressions that were so similar. The anger they have toward their attorneys, which anybody, I watch the trial every day because I had it on my channel. Boy, the looks she gave Jackson were just unbelievable. And, the lashing out, I could show you picture after picture. And Sarah Boone, the same thing. Nobody falls short of getting their anger and their wrath. They both, I believe, have a serious drinking issue. That's my belief based on all the evidence I've seen. She meaning Reed, had 9 drinks that night. Boone, there were a couple of bottles of wine that apparently were empty. We don't know what Jorge drank as opposed to what she drank. But by her own admission, she was still drunk the same day or the next day. She said that she was drunk the next day. You can tell by the videotape. Again, she videotaped. I'm sorry, I should have set up this case and the other cases. I'm just assuming everybody knows the details. But in this particular case, they call it the suitcase because the suitcase case, because she and her boyfriend, who had several run-ins with the law for domestic abuse, they'd both been previously arrested for domestic abuse. They were supposedly playing hide and go seek, and he hides in a suitcase. I mean, what a contortionist. The suitcase was pretty big, but still. And she won't let him out. He begs for his life. She won't let him out. She says he can't breathe, begs, and she goes to bed. The next morning, he's dead. And so that's the sum and substance of the case. She's fired 8 attorneys. Then she went pro se because the judge ordered her to. And then now she has her 9th attorney. And I think he's doing the best he can. They're going to argue basically the battered spouse syndrome situation, that she was battered and, again, like a self-defense, just like the Menendez. This was her opportunity to kill him, so she took it before she was killed. That's sort of the idea. She was offered today 15 years. She didn't take it. Don't ask me why. She should have took it and ran with it. But I can kind of see she's looking at about 22 years not taking it if she's convicted. So, what's 7 more years? Maybe she feels like 15 years is an eternity. So what's 7 more? But I don't think that's it. I think she thinks she can win. I think she thinks she's always right. And I think that's why she turned down this plea deal. Have I missed anybody? Got Diddy, I did Reed, I did Birchmore, and then I want to get to your questions. We did Menendez. Oh gosh, I knew I missed one. Garth Brooks. Let's talk about Garth Brooks. First of all, who here could sing virtually every Garth Brooks song from the 90s? Because I know I could. My wedding song was I Have Friends in Low Places, that everybody joins in after the romantic song. I've always loved Garth Brooks. A friend of ours that we actually went to college with and know very well, he actually works for Garth Brooks. It's hard to think that Garth Brooks, and I'm really not buying that he did what was said in this particular complaint. I want to go really quick and read just one particular portion that I cited actually on my Twitter as well. Under paragraph 8, she says, Brooks rape of Miss Rowe. Again, it's like Jane Doe, so Jane Roe. Brooks' rape of Miss Rowe was painful and traumatic. Having no regard for her well-being and intent on his own, I'm so sorry, having no regard for well-being and intent on his own sexual gratification, at the expense of Miss Rowe's physical, mental, and emotional trauma. At some point during the nightmare, Brooks even, this is the point, held her small body upside down by her feet and penetrated her. I was trying to really picture this. Like, first of all, you'd have to be so strong. You know, for those of you who lift weights, to hold something like this, you know, you could take barbells and hold them. It's really hard. But somebody, even if they're 120 pounds, 110 pounds, to hold them physically up in the air, because that's what she says happened, completely off the ground, and then commit sex, not oral sex, commit actual sex. It's mind-boggling to me to really actually picture that. But she lays out such specificity, and I think that's going to be problematic for her. She also talks about the back injuries that she suffered and the neck injuries because of all this, or because of this sex right here. Were they in a consensual situation? We'll see. I think that makes a lot more sense to me than he raped her. And I think that is why he's going to let this go to court. He's not going to pay up. He's not going to be blackmailed. He specifically says, I'm not paying hush money because hush money is wrong. But I do want to point this out because I found it interesting today that Trisha Yearwood, who is another famous movie star, she and Garth have been married for years, and their house that they had on the market but hadn't sold right before the legal documents were filed by Garth Brooks. So Garth Brooks filed documents not naming the makeup artist and not naming himself, but just basically trying to preempt this lawsuit. So he went in advance of it and tried to prevent it. Didn't work. She filed it. But I found that interesting. And maybe it's just a coincidence. I'm not one to believe in coincidences very much, but I know they can happen. So I don't know. We're going to see how this plays out, but I don't know. We'll see if Garth was capable of doing the hideous things that were described in that suit. From a victim standpoint, I mean, being raped and being disregarded in this way. So we'll see how it plays out. But could it be that perhaps it was something consensual? Could it all be a bunch of lies to get money and to humiliate Garth Brooks? We know she wanted to be on salary. We know she wanted a raise, and we know she wanted benefits. And we know Garth Brooks wasn't going to do that. He contracted her for when he would need his hair and makeup done. That's normally how it works in the industry. Whew, that's it. Okay, I want to get to your questions really quick. Oh my gosh. So Sonia says, I have no idea who Garth Brooks is. That is so funny. So, I only say that because I could tell you are a very young person probably, or maybe you just don't like country music, but Garth Brooks was really an icon in the 90s. He had so many songs that were very well known. Thunder Row. I would sing a few bars, but you would hang up immediately. You'd be like, okay, I'm off this channel right now because I'm a horrible singer. But the biggest one I think that most people know is I've Got Friends in Low Places, where the whiskey drowns and the beer chases my blues away. Anyway, it's a great song, but very well known, just a huge artist, worth millions of dollars because of his artistry. So, but nevertheless, if he did do anything nefarious, obviously he needs to be held accountable. But he's already really, the damage to his reputation, somebody coming forward with a suit like this, if it's not true, is already been done. So I hate that if it is false. Let's see. The GOAT. Yes, I agree he was afloat. Tom, it's good seeing you here. I haven't seen you on for a while. Yeah, Laura or Sonia says Laura, he doesn't strike as the type that would do that. But yeah, it's got to go to court. Let me see, anything else? Trisha Yearwood has a great cooking show. Good to know. I'm a cook. I love to cook. Summer Wells. Summer Wells case, somebody asked in chat about Wells. The Wells case is a case that I just personally believe was handled wrong. It wasn't handled as a crime scene. It was handled as a missing child. There's all sorts of problems in that county. I posted twice about it. I need to post it again, that the son of the sheriff there was indicted and convicted on numerous counts of sexual assault of a minor, rape of a minor, basically, and got a year probation. I know everybody thinks Massachusetts is wrought with public corruption. You need to take a look at the situation in Tennessee, because it's really frightening what's going on there. And in that case, to me, they had a chance to make it early on. They took the boys away. They had 3 boys, 3 male children, and they took them out because of neglect and child abuse. Well, that's your chance to charge those parents. How can you remove children from a home and say it's neglect and child abuse, and you don't charge neglect and child abuse? I've always wondered with that case. I think there's so much more to it that we'll probably never know. I think law enforcement probably missed their chance. I think Summer is gone. I don't think she's alive. I think that people in that family killed her, likely accidentally, and disposed of the body. That's what I truly think happened with Summer. And I worry about Sebastian Rogers. Not going to go so far to say anything like that at this point. The investigation's still ongoing. But you look at the same trajectory of Summer Wells is the trajectory of Sebastian Rogers. Thank you so much, Sunshine Susie. I really appreciate it. Let me read what you have to say. The Menendez brothers, I sympathize with their story. If true, how much time do you think they should serve? Well, I think that truly, if they were viciously raped by their father for all those years, and they've served over 3 decades now, Susie, I think that one would argue possibly that they have done their time. And that's certainly the argument that's going to be made. Again, it's not that I don't have a lot of compassion for anybody who suffers such a horrible abuse and situation as a child. I mean, it just makes me so angry. I just don't believe them. So, but what a great question. Thank you for that. Sebastian Rogers. I'm cooking up an actual show on that, so I don't want to tip my hand with anything. But I'm hoping to have a show on Sebastian by no later than next week. And I'm hoping to have a show on Caleb Harris, working on a couple of special things this week. Spoke with Randy night before last. And so I really can't wait to do. I was hoping to do it tomorrow night. I don't know if it's going to come through, and then the hurricane, but I'm hoping Thursday, hopefully, to do a show on Caleb Harris, and next week on Sebastian. Let's see. Oh gosh, yes. Agents investigating Diddy in Europe. You know what? The type of allegations that are against Diddy, they don't stop with an ocean. Wherever Diddy went, unfortunately, I think it's very possible that his sexual deviance, allegedly exploitation of individuals followed. So yes, I saw that too, that he's being investigated abroad as well. Let me see. How is someone supposed to act if they were sexually assaulted? No one can say. Debbie, I agree with you. I don't think there's any way to particularly say, but I do believe that the circumstances regarding when that came out our suspect. I believe that no investigation was done really regarding that because they never came forward. It's just, I think everybody has to look at that letter, the circumstances surrounding when the letter was found and who found it, and the Menudo fellow, Rosell, I believe it's Rosello, why he came forward, why he might have had some inclination to come forward, and if there's any corroborating facts supporting his allegation. These are quite serious allegations to make against somebody, again, if they're not true. Jose Menendez, his legacy that was so great, all the money's gone, by the way, everyone. The money was spent on lawyers and on taxes, and it's all gone, the millions he earned. And I just find so much irony in the whole case of somebody that worked so hard and now is just thought so low of. I don't know what the truth is, though. I want to get to, would love to see more of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Everyone, thank you so much for being on. I always hate to kind of jabber on the type of host that likes to hurry up and get down to facts and business, answer some questions, and then move on. You guys stayed with me for such a long time. Thank you so much. If you did like the show, please like it. Please pass it on to your true crime friends that hopefully they might start tuning in. I'm have some very good guests coming down the line. Hopefully one, maybe even tomorrow. And I look forward to seeing you here back on Break the Case. Until next time, may justice be served. Oh, and stay safe, everyone in Milton's Path.